The year was 2847, and humanity had been trapped in their own solar system for 300 years. It all started in 2541 when the Galactic Assembly, a group of 400 alien species, decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed in space. They called it the Terran Exclusion Mandate. The aliens had watched humanity spread from Earth to 17 star systems in just 200 years. They saw how fast humans learned, how quickly they copied alien technology, and how fiercely they fought their wars. The Assembly became afraid. So they built a prison. A wall of gravity machines surrounded the Sol system, stopping any human ship from traveling faster than light. Patrol fleets from 12 different species watched the borders day and night. Humans could look at the stars, but they could never reach them again. For 300 years, humanity waited. They watched. And they planned. Commander Ellie Morgan stood at the window of Armstrong Station, a giant space station floating above Earth. She was 52 years old, with gray hair cut short and tired lines around her eyes. She had spent her whole life working on one dream, getting humanity back to the stars. Behind her, the station was full of noise and movement. Thousands of people were working on machines and computers, preparing for the most important moment in human history. A young man walked up to her. His name was Kevin Shaw, and he was only 30 years old. He was nervous, but he tried not to show it. "The ship is ready," Kevin said. "We can leave in 1 hour." Ellie did not turn around. She kept looking at Earth, so blue and green and beautiful below them. "What about the alien sensors? Will they see us?" "Dr. Tanner says our hiding systems will work. They should not be able to find us." Ellie finally turned to face him. Her eyes were serious. "Shit is not good enough. If we fail, the aliens will not just punish us. They will punish every human everywhere. They might destroy Earth itself." Kevin did not look away. "Then we will not fail." Ellie almost smiled. That was the human way. The aliens never understood this about humans. They saw the wars and the fighting, but they missed the most important thing. Humans never gave up. They never accepted that something was impossible. Every wall could be broken. Every prison could be escaped. "Tell everyone to get ready," Ellie said. "We leave in 30 minutes." The ship was called the Pathfinder. It was an old cargo ship, ugly and patched together with pieces from 100 different machines. But hidden inside was something the aliens thought could never exist. A faster-than-light engine built entirely by humans. The woman who built it was named Hannah Tanner. She was 68 years old, with white hair and a bent back, but her mind was sharper than anyone else alive. For 40 years, she had studied every piece of information about alien technology that she could find. She read stolen files. She studied broken machines. She built models and tested theories in secret laboratories. Hidden under the moon, the aliens used gravity wells to punch holes in space. Hannah found a different way. She discovered how to fold space itself, like folding a piece of paper, so that two distant points touched. It was completely new. It was completely different. And it was humanity's only hope. The crew of the Pathfinder was small. Only 23 people, the best pilots, engineers, and scientists that humanity had. 23 people betting everything on a machine that had never been tested. Ellie sat in the captain's chair. Kevin was beside her. Around them, the rest of the crew took their places and strapped themselves in. "Pathfinder, this is Armstrong Control," a voice said through the speakers. "You are clear to leave. Good luck. Armstrong Control, we understand. Starting engines now." The ship began to move. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. They flew toward the edge of the solar system, toward the invisible wall that had trapped them for so long. "I see an alien patrol," said Lisa Parker from her station. She was watching the sensors carefully, 2 ships. They have not seen us yet. Keep us hidden behind them, Ellie ordered. We only need a few more minutes. The Pathfinder moved through the darkness like a shadow. No lights, no signals. Just a small, ugly ship carrying the hopes of an entire species. When they reached the edge of the barrier, Hannah's voice came through the speakers. The engine is ready. We can jump when you give the order. Ellie looked at the stars one more time. Out there, aliens were living their lives, sure that humans would never bother them again. Sure that their prison was perfect and unbreakable. They were wrong. Jump, Ellie said. The universe twisted around them. Colors that had no names flashed across the windows. The ship shook and groaned. For one terrible moment, Ellie thought they would be torn apart. Then everything became still. Kevin looked at his screens, his hands shaking. We made it. We are 47 light years from Earth. No one spoke. No one could speak. For 300 years, humans have been told they would never leave their solar system. That they were too primitive, too dangerous, too young. That the stars belonged to everyone except them. And now, in this small, ugly ship, 23 humans had proven them all wrong. Ellie stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak. Send a message to Armstrong Station. Tell them the Pathfinder has arrived safely. Tell them the stars are open again. She walked to the window and looked out at unfamiliar space. New stars. New possibilities. New dangers. The aliens would know soon. They would come looking. The assembly would send their warships and their hunters. They would try to put humanity back in its cage. But humans had been building things in that cage for 300 years. Not just engines. They had built anger. They had built determination. They had built a hunger for the freedom that had been stolen from them. Ellie pressed her hand against the cold glass of the window. We are coming, she whispered to the universe. And this time, no one is going to stop us. Behind her, the crew began to celebrate quietly. They hugged each other. Some of them cried. Kevin was laughing and checking his screens over and over, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. Only Hannah was quiet. She sat at her station in the engine room, looking at the machine she had spent her whole life building. It had worked. Against all odds, against all logic, it had worked. She smiled and closed her eyes. The Pathfinder drifted through alien space, small and alone and very far from home. But it was only the beginning. The Pathfinder floated in the Kepler system, 47 light years from Earth. The jump had worked. Everyone was alive. But as the crew looked at their screens, their celebration died in their throats. They were surrounded. I am counting 30 ships, Lisa said, her voice tight with fear. They are everywhere around us. The view screen showed dozens of alien vessels. Some were smooth and silver. Some were covered with strange growths that looked almost alive. Some seemed to be made of crystal that glowed from inside. And in the middle of them all sat a space station as big as a small moon, covered with weapons. Kevin let out a long breath. So much for finding an empty system. Ellie gripped the arms of her chair. This was bad. Very bad. They had hoped to appear somewhere quiet, somewhere they could test their engines and make plans before anyone noticed them. Instead, they jumped straight into what looked like a major trading hub. They're sending us a message, Lisa reported. The translator is working on it now. Let me hear it. A face appeared on the screen. It was almost human-shaped, but covered in small blue scales. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and a mouth full of tiny, sharp teeth. Ellie recognized the species from old files. It was a Velith, one of the founding members of the Galactic Assembly. Unknown ship, you have entered assembly space without permission. Tell us who you are immediately, or we will destroy you. Ellie stood up slowly. She made herself breathe calmly. This moment would decide everything. This was the moment humanity returned to the galactic stage. This is Commander Ellie Morgan of the human ship Pathfinder. We come in peace. We only want to travel and trade like everyone else. The Veleth's 4 eyes blinked one after another. Ellie could see the shock on its alien face. That is not possible. Human ships cannot leave the Sol system. Your engines do not match any technology we know. Explain how you are here. We built our own engines. Your assembly locked us away because you were afraid of what we might become. You should have been more afraid of what we already were. The Veleth talked to someone off the screen. Ellie could see other aliens moving quickly, their gestures sharp and worried. Finally, the Veleth turned back. You will turn off your engines. You will let us come aboard your ship. If you fight us, we will kill you. Ellie shook her head. No. She nodded at Kevin, who had been quietly working at his controls. The Pathfinder's engines roared to life. The old ship jumped forward, squeezing between 2 alien cruisers that were trying to block them. The Fold engine needs 30 seconds to charge, Hannah called from the engine room. Then we can jump again. We do not have 30 seconds, Lisa said. They are shooting at us. The first shots missed. The alien gunners were not expecting human pilots. Kevin threw the ship into a spinning dive that would have broken the neck of anyone without special protection. The Pathfinder twisted and rolled through a storm of weapons fire. 20 seconds. A shot hit their side. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Red lights flashed everywhere. Shields are holding, Kevin reported. But not for long. 10 seconds. Another hit, harder than the first. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Someone in the back of the bridge cried out in pain. Smoke filled the air. Now! Hannah shouted. Jump! Ellie commanded. Space folded around them again. The alien ships, the giant station, the weapons fire, all of it disappeared. They emerged in empty darkness, far from any star. The bridge was a mess. Smoke and sparks and the smell of burning metal. But they were alive. How bad is it? Ellie asked. Kevin pulled up the damage reports. His face was grim. We have a hole in Deck 3, but it is sealed. Life support is at 70%. The Fold engine is fine, but we need at least 6 hours before we can jump again. 6 hours. In 6 hours, the entire assembly would know that humans had escaped. Every patrol ship, every hunter, every warship would be looking for them. But they had also learned something important. The Pathfinder was faster than anything the assembly had. Their folding technology was different, impossible to predict or block. They could run. They could hide. And eventually, they could find help. We need friends, Ellie said quietly. We need to find species that do not like the assembly. Species that might see us as partners instead of enemies. Kevin raised an eyebrow. And where do we find those? Hannah's tired voice came through the speakers. The old records talk about something called the Outer Reaches. Parts of space that the assembly claims, but does not really control. Pirates, rebels, species that refuse to join the coalition. If anyone will help us, they will be there. Ellie looked at the star map on her screen. The Outer Reaches were months away, even with their engine. Months of running and hiding and scrounging for supplies. Months of being the most wanted criminals in the galaxy. She smiled. Set course for the Outer Reaches. The next few weeks were hard. They jumped from system to system, always staying one step ahead of the assembly patrols. They found fuel at abandoned stations. They stole food from unguarded cargo ships. They fixed their damaged hull with parts taken from wrecked vessels floating in asteroid fields. And slowly, word began to spread. Humans had escaped. Humans had built their own faster-than-light engine. Humans were out there in the darkness, running and fighting and refusing to die. Some species heard this news with anger. They had voted for the Terran exclusion mandate. They wanted humans back in their cage, but other species heard it with hope. Species that had been conquered by the assembly. Species that had been enslaved or exploited or forgotten. Species that remembered what freedom felt like and wanted it back. The Pathfinder became a symbol. A small, ugly ship crewed by desperate humans, proving that the assembly was not as powerful as everyone thought. One night, as they drifted through an empty region of space, Ellie found Kevin sitting alone in the observation room. He was staring at the stars. "Do you think we can actually win?" he asked without looking at her. Ellie sat down beside him. "I do not know, but I know we cannot lose by giving up. The assembly expected us to stay in our cage forever. Every day we survive out here, we prove them wrong. Every species that hears about us starts to wonder if they could do the same thing." Kevin nodded slowly. "So we keep running. We keep running until we find enough friends to stop running. Then we start fighting." He smiled for the first time in days. "That sounds like a very human plan." "It is. And that is exactly why it might work." The stars shone cold and distant through the window. Somewhere out there, enemies were hunting them. But somewhere out there, friends were waiting too. They just had to find them. 2 years had passed since the Pathfinder first escaped from the Sol system. Everything had changed. Ellie Morgan now stood on the bridge of a much bigger ship called the Horizon. It was the flagship of a small fleet that flew under human command. 12 ships followed her now, crewed by humans who had escaped from Earth and aliens who had joined the rebellion. The outer reaches had welcomed them. It turned out that many species were tired of the assembly's control. They had been waiting for someone brave enough or crazy enough to fight back. Humans were exactly what they needed. "Assembly patrol ahead," Lisa reported from her station. She had grown into an excellent officer, sharp and calm under pressure. 3 destroyers in Sector 7. "Go around them," Ellie ordered. "We are not here to fight today." Today they were doing something more important. They were meeting a potential ally. The Ravari were an insect-like species with 6 limbs and hard shells covering their bodies. Their eyes were made of thousands of tiny parts that could see things humans could not imagine. 4,000 years ago, they had been a great civilization. They built ships that crossed galaxies. They were scientists and artists and explorers. Then the assembly came. They conquered the Ravari, took their resources, and turned them into servants. But the Ravari never forgot what they used to be. They hated the assembly with a cold, patient hatred that had burned for 40 centuries. The meeting took place on a dead moon, in the ruins of an ancient Ravari city. Ellie walked through broken streets, past buildings that once reached toward the sky, but now lay in pieces. It was a sad place, a reminder of what the assembly did to species that stood in their way. The Ravari ambassador was waiting in what might have been a temple long ago. She was huge, almost 3 meters tall, with a dark red shell that gleamed in the dim light. "Commander Morgan," the ambassador said through a translation device. "I am Coordinator Vast Understars. We have been watching you for some time. Coordinator, thank you for meeting with me. You have done something we thought was impossible. You have escaped the assembly and survived. My people want to know how." Ellie chose her words carefully. "We did not copy assembly technology. We found our own path, a completely different way to travel between stars. And we are willing to share what we have learned." The Ravari's strange eyes glittered with interest. "What do you want in return?" "An alliance. Your people have hidden shipyards in the Rift Nebula. You have engineers who still remember how to build great things. Together, we could create a fleet strong enough to challenge the assembly directly. You are talking about war. I am talking about freedom. For my people and for yours." Vast Understars was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, there was something new in her voice. something that sounded almost like hope. 4,000 years ago, my ancestors built wonders that are now just dust. The assembly destroyed us not because of what we did, but because of what we might do if we stayed free. Your species faces the same fate. They have trapped you not for your crimes, but for your potential. She reached out with one of her 6 limbs in a gesture of greeting. The rivalry will stand with humanity. Let the assembly learn what happens when slaves remember how to fight. It took 6 months to build the first ships that combined human and Rivari technology. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Rivari engineering was old and powerful. Human fold drives were fast and unpredictable. Together, they created vessels that could go anywhere and could not be stopped. Other species joined the rebellion. The Velith remnants, survivors of a species the assembly had nearly wiped out completely. The Maketi, beings made of living rock who had been forced to mine asteroids for centuries. The Soulless, artificial minds that the assembly hunted simply because they were not made of flesh. Each new ally brought something useful. The Velith knew how to hack assembly communications. The Markete could build weapons from almost nothing. The Soulless could calculate battle strategies faster than any living mind, and each ally had reasons to fight. Centuries of anger, generations of suffering, a deep hunger for revenge that matched humanity's own burning need for freedom. The fleet grew quickly. 10 ships became 50. 50 became 200. Secret bases spread across the outer reaches, connected by a network of fold drives that the assembly could not track. Ellie worked without rest. She planned attacks, managed supplies, settled arguments between species who had never worked together before. Sometimes she went days without sleep. Sometimes she forgot to eat until Kevin or Hannah forced food into her hands. "You are going to kill yourself," Kevin told her one evening as they reviewed battle reports. "I will rest when we win." "That is what you said last month." "And the month before." Ellie rubbed her tired eyes. "We are so close. Every week, more species join us. Every week, the assembly looks weaker. If I stop now, if I slow down, we might lose everything we have built." Kevin shook his head but did not argue. He understood. They all understood. This was not just a war for territory or resources. This was a war for the right to exist. The assembly had decided that some species were too dangerous to be free. Humanity was proving them wrong, one battle at a time. Hannah came in with a tablet in her hands. She looked excited, which was unusual for her. "I have finished the calculations. The new engine design is ready." Ellie sat up straighter. "Will it work?" "It should. It will not be as fast or as elegant as our original design, but it will be simple. Simple enough that any species with basic factories can build their own fold drive." This was the secret weapon. Not ships or soldiers, but knowledge. The assembly controlled the galaxy because they controlled faster than light travel. They decided who could go where and when. If every species could build their own engines, that control would disappear overnight. How long until we can share it? A few more weeks of testing. Then we will be ready. Ellie allowed herself a small smile. 2 years ago, she had been a desperate fugitive in a patched-together cargo ship. Now she commanded a fleet that could challenge empires. She had allies from across the galaxy. She had weapons that could break the chains, holding countless species in place. The assembly still thought of humans as pests. Dangerous pests, perhaps, but pests nonetheless. Something to be crushed when they became too annoying. They had no idea what was coming. Ellie looked at the star map on her wall. So many lights. So many worlds. So many species waiting for someone to show them that freedom was possible. "Get everyone ready," she said. "The real war is about to begin." The Battle of Caldera was never supposed to happen. It was meant to be simple. jump into assembly space, raid a supply depot, and jump out before anyone noticed. The fleet had done this kind of mission dozens of times. Quick and clean, no problems. But the assembly had been learning. When the Horizon and 49 other ships emerged from fold space, 12 assembly battleships were already there, waiting for them. "All ships, get us out of here," Ellie shouted into the communication system. But nothing happened. The engines powered up, the fold drives charged, and then simply stopped. "They are jamming us," Hannah reported from engineering. Her voice was tight with worry. "Some kind of dampening field. I have never seen anything like it. We cannot jump." Ellie felt cold fear spread through her chest. For 3 years, their fold drives had been their greatest advantage. The assembly could never catch them because they could always disappear. Now that advantage was gone. "More ships incoming," Lisa called out. "I count 8 additional vessels. And more are on the way." They had 50 ships against 20 assembly battleships. The numbers were not terrible, but assembly ships were massive. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a planet. And more kept arriving every minute. "All ships, form up around the horizon," Ellie commanded. "We fight our way out." What happened next was the bloodiest battle in the history of the rebellion. Ships exploded everywhere, turning into bright flowers of fire and metal. Crews fought and died in the cold darkness of space, giving their lives to buy seconds for their friends. Kevin flew the horizon like a madman, spinning and diving between enemy fire. But there were too many shots, too many enemies. A piece of metal came through the bridge wall and hit him in the chest. He fell from his chair, blood spreading across his uniform. Lisa grabbed him and dragged him toward the medical bay, still shouting targeting information even as she carried her wounded friend. The Revari fought with a fury that surprised everyone. Coordinator Vast Understars led her squadron in a direct attack on the biggest assembly ship, crippling its weapons. Half her ships were destroyed in the process, but she kept fighting. The Marchetti rammed their vessels into enemy cruisers, sacrificing themselves to protect the rest of the fleet. The Solus broadcast false signals, confusing assembly sensors and buying precious time. And through all of it, Hannah worked down in the engine room, surrounded by fire and broken machines. She was trying to find a way through the dampening field. Her fingers moved across screens and keyboards. Her mind raced through calculations that would have taken normal engineers weeks to understand. "I have found something," she shouted over the noise of battle. "There is a frequency gap in their jamming. If I can tune our drives to match it, we can slip through." "Do it," Ellie ordered. "It is dangerous. If the field adjusts while we are jumping, the fold could tear us apart. We will be torn apart if we stay here." "Do it." Hannah worked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Outside, the battle raged. More ships died. The medical bay was full of wounded. The horizon itself was taking damage, its shields failing piece by piece. Finally, Hannah's voice came through the speakers again. "Ready. All ships. Prepare for emergency fold on my signal." Ellie gripped her chair. Around her, the surviving crew held their breath. Now. The universe twisted and screamed around them. The dampening field grabbed at their ships, trying to drag them back. Ellie felt the horizon shaking like it was going to break into a million pieces. And then they were through. They emerged scattered across light years of empty space. The battle was over. They had escaped, but at what cost? Ellie looked at the damage reports coming in. Of the 50 ships that went into battle, only 31 survived. Thousands of people were dead. Kevin was in critical condition, the doctors working desperately to save his life. Hannah had collapsed from exhaustion and would not wake up for 3 days. The rebellion had survived, but just barely. Ellie sat alone in her ready room, staring at the names of the dead. So many names. Humans, Ravari, Marchetti, Velith, Solus. They had all trusted her. They had all believed in the cause. And now they were gone. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something at the wall and watch it break. But she did none of these things. Instead, she studied the reports again. She looked at how the assembly had set their trap. She analyzed their dampening technology. She found the weaknesses they had accidentally shown. The assembly was not unbeatable. They could be hurt. They could be surprised. They could be outmaneuvered. If you knew how at the Battle of Caldera, the rebellion had learned a hard lesson. But they had also learned something valuable. The assembly was afraid. That was why they had built the dampening field. That was why they had gathered so many ships in one place. They were afraid of humans and their allies. Afraid of what the rebellion represented. And fear made people make mistakes. Ellie made a decision sitting alone in that room. No more running. No more small raids and careful retreats. No more hiding in the shadows. It was time to bring the war directly to the assembly. It was time to show them what humanity could really do. She opened a communication channel to all surviving ships. This is Commander Morgan. I know we have suffered a terrible loss. I know many of us have lost friends, family, people we loved. But we have also learned something important today. The assembly is scared. They built special weapons just for us. They gathered fleets just to fight us. They know we are a threat. She paused, gathering her thoughts. We have a choice now. We can retreat. We can hide and lick our wounds and hope they do not find us. Or we can make them regret every decision that led to this day. We can show them that killing our people only makes us stronger. We can show them that humanity does not break. Across the scattered fleet, crews listened. Wounded soldiers looked up from their beds. Engineers stopped their repairs to hear their commander's words. I choose to fight. Who is with me? The response came from every ship. Human voices and alien voices, all saying the same thing. They were with her. Until the end. Ellie closed the channel and looked at the stars outside her window. The assembly wanted a war. They were about to get one. The Galactic Assembly met in the Grand Chamber on Axis Prime, the center of their civilization. 400 species sent representatives, filling the massive room with a rainbow of different bodies, shapes, and sizes. At the center sat the 7 founders, the oldest and most powerful species who had created the assembly thousands of years ago. Today, they were discussing the human problem. The Terran rebellion has grown too large to ignore, the Velith representative was saying. Our latest reports show they control more than 300 ships. They have made alliances with at least 40 species that used to be loyal to us. Then destroy them, one of the founders replied. It was a huge crystalline being that seemed to glow from within. Burn their bases. Hunt their ships. Remind everyone what happens to those who challenge us. We have tried. The humans use a form of faster-than-light travel we cannot stop or follow. They attack without warning and vanish before we can respond. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted total war. Ancient partnerships started to crack as species calculated which side would win. None of them noticed a tiny drone floating near the ceiling. It looked like a cleaning machine, but it was actually sending everything to a receiver hidden in space above the planet, 12 light-years away. Ellie Morgan watched the broadcast on her screen. 3 years of fighting, and now she was about to make her biggest move. They are scared, she said softly. Kevin nodded from his chair nearby. He had recovered from his wounds, though he walked with a slight limp now. Scared people do stupid things. Scared people also make deals. Look at them. Half those species are only loyal because they fear what happens if they leave. The cracks in the assembly are bigger than they have ever been. So, what do we do? Ellie smiled. It was not a gentle smile. We give them something new to be scared of. The plan was crazy. Everyone said so. Hannah spent hours listing all the ways it could fail. The Rivari coordinator called it extremely unwise in 17 different languages. Even the soulless beings of pure logic calculated the chances of success at less than 8%. Ellie did it anyway. The assembly ruled the galaxy for 2 reasons. First, they controlled all faster-than-light travel. Second, they controlled the navigation beacons that helped ships find their way between stars. If you wanted to go anywhere, you needed their permission and their technology. Ellie planned to destroy that monopoly forever. For 3 years, Hannah and her team had been working on the fold drive design. They made it simpler. They made it smaller. They made it easy enough that any species with basic factories could build their own version. It would not be as fast as the original, but it would work. Once everyone had their own drives, no one would need the assembly anymore. "We are ready to send the plans," Lisa reported from her station. "We will use the assembly's own communication network against them. Every system will receive the blueprint at the same time. How long until they realize what is happening? It is already happening. Right now, every species in the galaxy is getting detailed instructions for building their own fold drive. Completely free. A gift from humanity." The reaction was immediate. On Axis Prime, the Grand Chamber fell into chaos. Species that had been loyal for 1,000 years suddenly realized they did not need the assembly anymore. Trade routes that had been controlled forever were now open to anyone with a ship. In the outer reaches, the rebellion's communication channels exploded with messages of support. Species that had been afraid to join before were now volunteering everything they had. Ships, crews, resources all flooding in. Within 1 week, the assembly's control of the galaxy was effectively over. But Ellie was not finished. The Horizon led a fleet of 500 ships to the Sol system. They appeared from fold space inside the barrier that had imprisoned humanity for 3 centuries. Right above Earth, the assembly patrol ships ran away. Their crews did not want to die for a cause that had already lost. Ellie opened a channel to Earth. Her voice was strong and steady. "This is Commander Ellie Morgan of the Liberation Fleet. We are coming home." The answer came from Armstrong Station, where the children of the people who had launched the Pathfinder were still waiting. "Commander Morgan, this is Director Amy Sullivan. Welcome back. We have been expecting you." The barrier fell within hours. Technicians who had been secretly helping the rebellion shut down the gravity machines. Human ships that had been hiding throughout the solar system came out of their hiding places and joined the fleet. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky. For the first time in 300 years, they knew the stars were theirs again. The assembly had no choice but to negotiate. The rebel coalition was too big and too well armed to crush. The Terran exclusion mandate was officially cancelled. Humanity was given full membership in a new, reformed galactic community. They offered Ellie the position of first ambassador, the human who would represent their species to the galaxy. She said no. "I am a soldier," she told the officials who came to make the offer. "My job was to open the door. Someone else can figure out what to do now." She retired to a small house in the mountains, far from cities and crowds. Sometimes, Kevin visited, walking slowly because of his old injury. Sometimes, Hannah came, still scribbling equations on whatever paper she could find. And sometimes, late at night, Ellie would go outside and look up at the stars that belonged to everyone now. The stars that humanity had fought to reclaim. Not through conquest or destruction, but by giving away the one thing that the assembly had kept locked up for so long. Freedom of movement. Freedom to go wherever you wanted. The Galactic Assembly had banned humanity from the stars because they were afraid of what humans might become. They should have been afraid of what humans already were. A species that would burn everything down before accepting a cage. A species that never gave up, never surrendered, never stopped fighting. But in the end, humans had not burned anything. They had done something much more powerful. They had set everyone free. Ellie watched a shooting star cross the sky. Somewhere out there, ships were traveling to new worlds. Species that had been enslaved were building new lives. Children were dreaming of journeys their parents could never have imagined. All because a small, ugly cargo ship called the Pathfinder had dared to break the rules. She smiled and went back inside. The story was over. But for humanity, and for the galaxy, a new chapter was just beginning.